Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello, and welcome to episode 18 of PvA Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft, and joining me, a turkey's worst nightmare, Larry Hunt.
That's right. This is the first one I think I've agreed with.
How are you doing, my friend? How was your Thanksgiving?
I'm good. I had a great Thanksgiving. So my wife and I both have parents who are divorced. And this Thanksgiving, we went to see her brother, who does not live in the same place as our parents. And it may be the first Thanksgiving I've had where I just got to stay in one place the whole time. So It was amazing. I always give you a hard time because you didn't get 2 Christmases growing up, but maybe it was worth it.
Yeah, the bouncing around during the holidays is the worst part. Just trying to juggle where you're going to be, when you're going to be, and no real time to relax. It's a time in life where you get the most time off work, and yet by the end of it, you're like, I think I'm ready to just get back to work.
Yeah.
This is PvA Radio. We get together every week, and each of us brings one of the biggest news stories in the gaming world and then have an in-depth conversation about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article. You can find us on podcast services everywhere with new episodes posting every Tuesday. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search PvA Radio. We'll pop right up. If you want to be a part of the show, you can visit playerversusall.com/PVAQ. Submit a question there, and we'll hit on that a little bit more later. Before we jump into everything, Larry, a little bit of housekeeping for us to cover.
Ooh.
Been mentioning this for a couple weeks now, but we are going to begin streaming our episodes soon. We have a YouTube, Twitch channel, twitch.tv/PvA Radio. We've been, Larry has been streaming some Fallout 76 on it. And so you can go follow it now. And I'm probably going to start streaming some Overwatch on it as well. And then probably by the beginning of the year, we will be streaming new episodes. Just whenever I get a chance to get out to Larry's and get him set up. So,
yeah.
You looked like you were going to say more.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, all I had was yeah.
Also, if you visit playerversusall.com right now, you can sign up for when we will be announcing our first issue. So if you didn't tune in last week, I'm relaunching the playerversusall.com site in a more focused manner. Going to be more of a magazine style. Each month we'll pick a different topic to kind of organize our issue around, and for that entire month we'll just be releasing content around that issue. So middle of December is when we're going to be announcing what that first issue is. You can sign up for our mailing list to be one of the first to know. Just go to playerversusall.com and you'll see a little sign up link there. I'm very excited about it, but Larry, that's not what we're here for. We're not here for all this housekeeping. We're here to listen to what you have been playing. What have you been playing, Larry?
So the last couple weeks kind of run together for me. I'm not sure where one ended and one began, but at some point in the last couple weeks, I played some Overwatch. And I have such a love-hate relationship with the game. I love the game. I hate most of the people playing the game. We had a match recently where we got paired up with a guy who one-tricks May. And I love May. May's a great character. But one trick in May, man. It just... Anyway, he blamed Luke and I. We were tanking. He blamed us for losing because we weren't protecting him well enough. As though the tank's job is to protect the May one trick.
Yeah. I don't know, man. And it's just me and you today, so we can linger here for a bit. So, Seagull, former... pro player for the Dallas Fuel, put out a video a couple weeks ago about the state of Overwatch and just kind of how currently ladder is just not fun to play. It's not fun to play ranked. And so just kind of talking about some things at his level in terms of just it's kind of a rock paper scissors game of what the other team's going to be running and that sort of stuff. But talking more broadly, just kind of about the community and the attitude that surrounds the game. And I've spent a lot of time trying to just thinking about like what can be done to fix like the toxicity in the game and what can be done to make ranked fun again. And just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about it as well. Just of like, this is a game we've loved since beta.
Yes.
I've fallen out of it from time to time because of the grind, and but now I'm like super into it.
Yeah.
But what, in your opinion, can be done to kind of help alleviate some of the, I don't know, just awfulness that is ranked?
As far as the toxicity goes, I think they've done about as much as they can do. You've got the option to create looking for group, to enforce roles. But as you and I have discovered, just because someone signs up to play a role doesn't mean they understand what that means. I think the reporting system is about as good as you can get it. Like I see reports online where people get suspended from the game. I'm browsing some subreddits. And it's always comical when someone's like, I have no idea why I got suspended from this game. I've never done anything. And then Blizzard like releases a log of the exact words they used. Have you seen any of those posts?
No, I haven't.
It turns out you can't hurl slurs at people and continue to play the game. That's actually toxic behavior. But anyway, I think all that stuff is good. But there is an issue of people not understanding the game, but also having a great confidence that they do understand the game. Mm-hmm. Those are the toxic people, I think. Those are the only toxic people left. I mean, besides the outright trolls. The only people I come across that I really hate playing with are the ones who, like, they're so confident they have it all figured out and they know what everybody wants to do, but they just fundamentally do not get the game.
Yeah.
Like the May who thought our job was to protect him. So on that side of it, I just don't know what there is to be done beyond what they've done. But on the gameplay side of it, and you and I have talked about this several times, so I'm sorry if I step on your toes here. But I agree with something that you said to me a couple weeks back, that they really messed up in modifying characters to directly counter other characters. Which
is a point that Seagull made in the video. I don't want to take credit for that.
So this original idea you had.
Yeah.
Like everything's just so locked in. If they have this character, you need this character kind of thing. And whereas before, like you could play certain comps to counter certain other comps. But now you just get so locked into if they have this guy, then we need to have this guy. And I think that actually contributes to the toxicity too, because there are people who like characters. Mm-hmm. And it's not really a lot of fun when your character is not viable unless the other team picks the character that you need to counter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's kind of just a fundamental flaw within the design of the game. Because in original Overwatch, and this is a point that Seagull made in the video, and I think it's worth bringing up here, just like there were hard counters were not a thing. Like, people think of like the Widow Pharah duel, but the thing with that duel is Widow has to hit the shots, or Pharah has to play the map correctly, but the matchup is even if the skill of the player is even, because one doesn't just completely delete the other. Whereas like Brigida before this update that's coming, and we're kind of in the weeds here, but that's okay. Brigida before the nerf that's coming, you could not play Tracer with a Brigida on the map for the most part, just because if she got a stun on you, it was one hit after that with the flail and you're done. And I think Blizzard kind of got upset with how popular and essential it became in the higher elos to run dive. And rather than systemically fixing it iteratively, they decided, like, here's one character we're going to put in the game and just completely alter the whole, like, viable compositions. And now the cat's kind of out of the bag, and it's like, how do you do this without just going in and highlighting all the code for Brigida and hitting backspace? So it's an interesting spot. Now, I'm less concerned about that, because I think from a gameplay perspective, even in the current meta, it can be fun if you're all playing together, even as a tank getting bounced around. But the toxicity is a big thing for me, and I agree with you on multiple fronts. I think a big thing is just this idea that you are better than what your rank is. And that the reason that you are stuck in your rank is because of all the idiots that you're playing with. And I have a tendency sometimes to get caught up in that mentality as well, without just realizing, like, there are things that I can be doing individually to help improve my chances of climbing and my team's chances of winning. And that's not all the time. There are times where there can be, where you may have somebody on your team that's just like feeding constantly, but pretty much all the toxicity I encounter comes from people who think that they should be in Diamond or in Masters, but they're hard stuck in high gold because of idiots like me or whatever. And the number of lies that I hear of people being like, oh, this is my Smurf account, my other account is in mid Diamond. It's just like, cut the bullshit. Yeah. Like, what does it matter? It's just a number. Like, I want to climb. I want to be good at the game too, but to blame other people for where you at, I think it is a big deal. And one tricking, I think, is a problem too. I played a lot of Paladins over the weekend because I only had my Switch and I needed to play knockoff Overwatch in order to get my fix. But one of the things that requires you to do in Paladins is have playtime across a certain amount of characters before entering into ranked. And I don't think that would completely fix the problem in Overwatch, but I think a lot of times what happens is players get into the game, they kind of pick their character from the outset, like I did with Pharah.
Yeah.
When the game first came out, and you think, this is my character, I'm going to play nobody else. But then when you start to play with other people, you start to discover that, oh, this person's fun to play with too. This person's fun to play with too. And I think there should be this thing of like, you have to have X amount of hours on X amount of characters in quick play before you can come over into competitive. Just to kind of open up the world of Overwatch to people and the fun that is playing other characters. Like, I've been playing a lot of Moira in quick play and realizing that she's really fun to play with, and I've never been a main healer. But now if we get put on a team and that's a role that needs to be filled, I can fill that role. So I think something like that could work. Do you have any other ideas? I've got plenty.
You mentioned one. So most of my good ideas are your ideas, but something I really liked. Now, this problem is solved if you're playing Find a Group, but if you're not, I liked an idea you had where if we're going to have more than 2 DPS in a group that just gets randomly stuck together, then if you just queue up, then like if someone wants to pick a third or fourth DPS, the team has to vote and approve. Yeah, they can do that. Like they have to actually get the approval of the majority of the team for that to happen. I really like that idea.
Yeah, and I think the way you do that is you don't give the 2 people who insta-lock DPS a vote in the matter either. Because that would prevent like just coming in and stacking and doing that. Like coming in as a 4-stack or whatever and outvoting the 2 randoms you get placed with. So I definitely think that would be good because there are situations where a third DPS, like whatever, especially in our elo, like it can work. But that should be a group decision rather than just luck of the draw. So another thing that, and I can't remember if this was in Seagull's video or if this came up when he went on Jane's podcast to talk about it, but apparently when Blizzard first announced Overwatch, competitive was only going to be for 6 stacks. And if you weren't in a 6 stack, you had to just go play quick play. And there was this big outcry that they needed to add solo queue into it. And so Blizzard yielded because, I mean, you do alienate a large portion of people by saying you need to have 5 friends to play this with or find places on the internet to be able to find groups to play with. But I do kind of like the idea of, all right, let's move competitive as it is now into quick play. Like make that quick play. And you can still have your systems or whatever, but there needs to be a whole separate competitive game type for 6 stacks to be able to go into and rank. Also, eliminate 5 stacking so that you don't have a 5 stack getting grouped up with a solo queuer. In fact, I would say no more than stacks of 3 unless you're going to go all the way to stacks of 6. Because how many of our games get ruined by we get in there with a stack of people who are in party chat and refuse to come out. So, and then another thing I think is that if you're going to play competitive, I think your profile should have to be public.
Yeah.
So that I know that, oh man, well, this person never plays Rhine, but for some reason they picked him in this game. And I get what Blizzard was after with like wanting to avoid the toxicity, but there's a whole new breed of toxicity that's come through having private profiles.
Yeah. I also like the idea of just completely getting rid of play of the game. Mm-hmm. And while we're at it, medals. Because none of it matters anyway. None of it makes a difference. All it does is pump people's opinions of themselves up and turns into like it can be a fun little competition between teammates, but more often it just devolves into a not friendly competition between teammates. And I've got gold in this, and this. Y'all aren't pulling your weight. When the reality is, winning the game very rarely has to do with who's got what medals.
Yeah.
So just drop all that. I think that would make a world of difference.
And getting rid of play of the game would totally alter. I think play of the game, especially like in gold where we're at, tends to encourage people to over ult, which is a huge problem in Overwatch that causes you to lose future fights because you'll have a Genji who just got two kills, fights 6v4 is 1, and he pulls out Blade going for a 3K with that so he can get play of the game. And it's like, well, Blade would have been a lot better to have in the next 6v6 team fight than you pulling it out just so that we can all watch you.
Yeah.
And just the number of people who are like, and look, I'm saying all this being super toxic by having a Twitter account called Tales from Gold where I vent my frustration about all this. But the number of times we'll get in and you'll get a Genji who's like, all right, let's do nano grav Blade, and if I get below a certain HP, pop Transcendence. And it's like, look, this whole team doesn't exist just for you to get play of the game and to frag out and to feel like you're awesome. I mean, we got to play as a team. And I think with a lot of that sort of stuff, like cat's just out of the bag.
Yeah.
But I think in ranked, we should have more visibility into statistics, and there should be a higher depth of what we're seeing. Like, think about the number of stats you see for yourself when you just pull up the team screen. You can see a lot of stats on the right-hand side that are only visible to you. And I think it would be important to see, like, okay, I may not have made the board with how much damage I blocked as an Orisa, but I blocked this much damage, and that's that much healing that didn't need to get done. Like, and I think those are important stats to be able to see. The problem is that nobody knows how to look at those stats and really analyze them and understand how they've impacted the game. But I do think competitive should have a lot more of there should be a lot more transparency in how the team is performing. I think there should also be like statistics about how often, your team was fighting at full force.
Yes.
like, oh man, we spent X percentage amount of time fighting a man or two down. And like visibility among those stats, which would be super easy to do considering Blizzard knows when you're in spawn or when you're walking from spawn and not engaged in a fight. And being able to see like, oh, wow, we spent 65% of this match fighting a man down. Like, that's probably why we lost.
Yep.
So
yeah, the great irony with the toxic MA that I've been going on about is he was constantly yelling, group up, while running into the fight by himself.
while I was screaming, like, group up in spawn. As you spawn, do not walk out. And he just continued to walk out. Like, and that's the problem is, and then he lectured us at the end. And yeah. Anyway, no point in singling out just one instance. I mean, it's indicative of the whole thing. And it's a game like, and I think you said this at the top. It's this love-hate relationship that I have with it, and it's becoming like super frustrating because I want to play this game as it's intended to be played, and I've played it as it's intended to be played on multiple occasions, and it's so fun doing it like that. I just don't get it. That's 20% of the time I'm playing, if that.
Yeah.
So, what else have you been playing, Larry?
Fallout 76. And we'll talk more about that later, but unlike a lot of the internet, I'm having a lot of fun with this game. I don't think it's perfect by any means, and later on in the show I'm not going to like defend it as perfect, but it's a fun game. I like it. Cool.
As I mentioned, I played Paladins. I don't need to go a lot further than that. That game is just a holdover for when I don't have access to Overwatch. But I also started playing some Warframe on Switch, and I've started Warframe twice on the Xbox and just couldn't get into it. But the game is kind of perfect for Switch because it's very Destiny-esque in just the sense of like the missions are kind of like a dungeon crawl. You know, you're going in, it's a loot grind. At the end, you get rewarded, and so it's kind of perfect for the Switch to say, I'm going to pull my Switch out, do this little 20-minute mission, get my rewards, and hop out. So I haven't played a ton of it, so I don't want to give kind of full thoughts on it or anything, but it's free. And if you're into Destiny, and the thing that disappoints you about Destiny is the lack of content, from what I understand, like Warframe is flush with content. And so I'm excited to drill into it a little more. I'm going to start taking my Switch to work and playing during my lunch break a little bit. So
taking my Switch to work and playing during my work time.
That's right. That's right. All right, Larry.
What?
22 minutes into the show. Let's start the show.
All right. Sounds great.
What is your topic?
So my topic, as I have alluded to, is Fallout 76. And there's a lot going on this week talking about how it is Bethesda's weakest launch. And I think that this is without a question true. It has been a weak launch for a Bethesda game. But I've been really disappointed with how this game has been reported on and some of the things that have been said that have been presented as indicative of why it's been a weak launch. So what I would like to do is, you and I have both played it. I've played it a lot more than you have, but you've put in some good time on it too. So I want to spend some time cutting down the hyperbole and the doom for Bethesda predictions, and let's have an honest conversation about what is actually wrong with this game. And even there may be a handful of things that are right with it. Maybe. We'll see.
Fantastic. I am ready to have this conversation. I don't know if you listened to last week's show, Larry, but I was among the harsh critics.
That's all right.
So let us converse.
So first, I want to talk about what isn't wrong with Fallout 76. And what I mean by that is there have been a few things that have gone on in the past week, that maybe 2 weeks, that have been presented as like evidence of Fallout's great failure. And I just don't think that's a fair assessment. And the first thing on that list for me is the sales numbers. So there were two big articles that stood out to me, and I didn't link any particular site. There were multiple sites running similar articles in these veins, but one was talking about how Spyro the Dragon, the new Spyro game, sold more physical copies in the UK than Fallout 76 did. And closely related to that is that Fallout 76 has sold 80% fewer physical copies than Fallout 4. Now, most of those headlines say Fallout 76 has sold 80% fewer copies than Fallout 4. But when you read the article, which most people don't, it's fewer physical copies. So all these sales numbers, we're just talking about physical copies in the UK. And my favorite, I read some Reddit discussion on this, and one Redditor's comment included the phrase, "Unless there's been a massive shift away from physical sales in the last 3 years." Well, Redditor, there has. So I don't think that lower physical sales is like indicative that this game is a colossal failure. And Spyro selling more physical copies makes sense to me because it's like a small single player kind of game. And
I disagree with you here.
Okay.
And I disagree with you here for this reason. From my experience working at GameStop, the people bought physical for two reasons. Number one, they were just vehemently opposed to going all digital. And so, and you've addressed that. I'm sorry, my house is going insane right now for some reason.
It's a ghost.
So that's the first reason. Second reason, though, is I'm a little leery about whether or not I'm going to like this title. Let me buy it physically, because then if I don't like it, I have the out. So when we're talking about the physical versus digital kind of trends, it's true. Like, digital sales have been growing at kind of a staggering pace over over this entire console generation. However, I think Fallout 76 came with its own set of cautions. Even for people who were fans of the Fallout universe, it was something different. It was something Bethesda has never really attempted before in a game like this. And so I would think that a game like this would sell more physical copies than a Fallout 4, because Fallout 4 was more of kind of a known quantity. People knew that if they were a Fallout fan, they were likely going to like it. I feel like with Fallout 76, you would have had a lot more people, and this is anecdotal, mind you, but you'd have had a lot more people who would say, not quite sure about this. I'm going to buy it physically so that, if I don't like it, I have the option to resell it or trade it in or what have you.
Yeah. And so I'm not totally in disagreement there. But myself, as an example, a few years ago, I bought 2 physical copies of Halo 5, but now I'm doing the whole game share thing. I think that factors in. So I think it matters that Fallout sold, that 76 sold 80, that it sold fewer physical copies. I think it matters, but I don't think 80% should be taken as a face value that this game is selling 80% fewer copies. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all in all, like I fully believe it's selling significantly fewer copies.
Yeah.
But I doubt that number is 80%. And another reason I kind of expect that lower number is it's not a mainline Fallout game. It's a spin-off, and it's kind of a different style. And we knew it wasn't going to sell like Fallout 4 sold.
But it is a spin-off of an era of Fallout that Fallout fans are very interested in,
Yeah.
Like the lore behind this game, and I said this last week on the podcast with Cody, like they took something that people really, really wanted to see and gave it to them in kind of the least Fallout way possible, and kind of besmirched that era of the lore that people were really excited to explore.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have anything else you want to say on the fewer physical copies?
No.
Because I'm going to roll on.
Go ahead.
All right. The next thing that I saw thrown around here was Fallout was on sale for $37 for Black Friday. It must be failing so bad, but so was Black Ops. Is Black Ops 3 failing?
Black Ops 4.
Gosh, I can't count. Thanks for saving me there.
I'll push back on you here a little bit. 2 things. Fallout 76 was out for 9 days. Black Ops 4 came out in the beginning of October. I do think there's a difference. And I think that $37 price dipped even lower today on Cyber Monday. I think it dipped down all the way to, I mean, not much lower, but to 35, I think was the cheapest that you could get it. And again, it's been out less than 2 weeks. But also within that is that these cuts were made at the publisher level. These were Bethesda price cuts. These weren't retailer price cuts, which I think is a big difference here. So,
all right.
So essentially the way retail works is they don't buy games directly from the publisher, right? Like they don't buy up a horde of games and then put them on their shelves and sell them at whatever price that they want. They sell them at the MSRP, and then for every copy that they sell, they have to send back a portion to the publisher, and then they get to keep whatever, they didn't have to send back. So if a retailer cuts prices like a lot of Black Friday deals are, it is that it's in such a way that the publisher still gets their cut of whatever that game sale was going to be. It's just that the retailer gets a smaller portion of that, but it's just a game of volume, right? Like if I sell 15 times the amount of copies over this weekend than I did the weekend before Black Friday, I still came out pretty good. The fact that this came from a publisher level and was Bethesda slashing the price that significantly, I think does indicate kind of a different tale, because it was Bethesda that was taking the loss on that in order to sell more copies rather than the retailer taking the loss.
All right. I've been educated.
Boom, baby. Welcome to Educational 3 Podcast.
So the next thing I want to address is the mixed reviews. And again, I want to make this clear. I'm not trying to swoop in here and say that Fallout is a perfect, flawless game that doesn't deserve any criticism. But I do think there's some hyperbole, some over-the-top stuff happening. And that's kind of what I wanted to address before we really talk about what's going on with this game. So the reviews have been, on the critical side, you're looking at Metacritic. It's been more mixed critically, but it's been more negative on the user side.
Can we just toss out all discussion of negative users? Like, user score is such a bogus thing, in my opinion.
And that's what I wanted to say. Like, you and I both know that there were a bunch of people who, the moment this game was announced, well, not the moment it was announced, the moment we heard that it was multiplayer, there were a lot of people who decided this game was trash, and they went ahead as soon as they could and left their review that it was trash, Mm-hmm. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that a bunch of those negative reviews are people who didn't even pick this game up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Let's chuck out all the user. Oops, I yanked a cord. Let's chuck out all the user reviews, the critical reviews though, like those matter a lot more to me.
Where's the Metacritic sitting at right now as far as the critical reviews?
I should have linked that and had it ready to go, but it is significant. Like the vast majority are mixed reviews.
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead. I'll look it up.
Well, we were kind of reaching the end of my
my apologies.
But yeah, I think it's fair that this game has mixed reviews. I think it's fair that this game has negative reviews. But when you scroll through a lot of the user negative reviews, it's not people thinking critically about the game. It's people butthurt that they didn't get a Fallout that they wanted. Mm-hmm. And I think that's different.
All right.
Go ahead.
It is sitting, it's Metascore, so it's the critical score. For PlayStation 4 is at a 50, and on Xbox One it is at a 49.
Yeah.
55 on PC. So and I think something that it's important to note there is, and I'm trying to remember the exact scale, so I think positive is either 7 or 7.5 and up. Mixed is anywhere between like 4 and 7 or 7.5, and then negative is anything below 4. But if we know anything about gaming reviews, especially AAA gaming reviews, the bashfulness to give any kind of game, any kind of AAA game, a Metacritic score, a review score under 50 or whatever, that outlet's equivalent of a 50 is, I think kind of paints the picture of that it's not necessarily a mixed. I think 50 is a pretty negative score. Just just when you view the review landscape in the way that it is in the AAA sphere.
All right.
I don't know. I don't know if that's fair.
It may be fair, but I don't know. See, it's kind of hard to. It's kind of hard to accurately read what people actually mean when they don't say what they actually mean.
Yeah.
You know? So we can speculate on that, but
Well, that's the culture we live in, man. We should be experts.
that's true. The South is the worst.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Bless the South's heart.
Yes, there we go.
But you added a link in here. Do you want to read that quote?
Do you have it pulled up? My computer goes real wonky and this link wasn't open for me earlier. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. So giant bomb unlikely to review Fallout 76. Gerstmann says, quote, "I'm not going to subject myself to another 20 to 30 hours of this mess just to put a number on it," end quote.
And look, there are redeeming qualities of Fallout 76, but I think a lot of the redeeming qualities of Fallout 76 are untapped potential.
Yeah.
That's my big thing. Is like you can kind of see the skeleton that they're wanting to put the flesh on, but the flesh just isn't there yet. And I think as a reviewer, and look, we don't review games. We give our thoughts on games, but we don't give like review scores. But I think you have to meet a game where it is in order to accurately score it. And I think it has to be accurately portrayed in what the most natural way of playing it is going to be, right? So I think you can look at Fallout 76 and be like, man, this is a game that is a lot of fun to get in with your friends and just kind of explore. But at the end of the day, most people that are experiencing this game are probably experiencing it like they would try to experience Fallout 4, where they're getting in there by themselves and they're trying to do the quest. And when you do that, unless you're really good at like making your own fun in this huge sandbox that Bethesda's created, the world is real sparse and empty. And I think that's where it fails, is like there's so much potential here, but none of it feels met.
Yeah. Okay. See, I feel differently about it. And I guess that's what happens. People have opinions. I kind of like the change of, I don't want to say change of pace. I guess it is that, but like, I don't care that there aren't a bunch of NPCs to deal with in this game. Like, I've really enjoyed like walking around and trying to dig the story out of the corpse of the world I'm in and piecing together what happened. And I think it's going to, like, whether you enjoy this game or not, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of where I meant to go with this, but that's okay. So,
My apologies.
We talked a little, you're all right, man. So, okay, let me just do this little rant and then I'll jump into what I'm saying here. I'm frustrated. And a lot of what I've seen floating around on the internet with this game is feeding into this, more on the user side and not really on the critical side. Because I think the critics are giving the game a fair shake. And as you've said, maybe they're giving it even more than a fair shake.
Yeah.
But I'm so sick of people like devoting themselves to pouring hatred on a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it's fine not to like something and not to partake in it, but I'm just so sick of every new installment of every established series being subjected to like rage.
Yeah.
Like Harry Potter right now, Star Wars, name a series. And when something new comes out, if it's different in the least way, if it's not what we expected, it's not exactly what we wanted, we're just like burning fires of rage. And I'm just like sick of it. A friend of mine shared a video on Facebook. I tried to find it. It was like a month and a half ago, so I'll never find it again because it was on Facebook. But it was like showing all these clips of 80s movies, and the narrator was like, remember when we used to go to the theaters and have fun? And it was like a 3-minute video. Stop being so nitpicky and just like enjoy things. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to recapture some of that as a society. Like, a thing doesn't have to perfectly appeal to exactly how I want it to turn out for it to be good. And sometimes a thing's not for me and I can dislike it, and that's fine. But I don't need to make an account and go and leave negative reviews on something I'm not even going to try. Like, and I don't need to devote the entirety of my Twitter feed to lashing out at developers and people because they didn't give me what I wanted.
Right, but we can't swing that pendulum so far the other way that we avoid criticism of things that rightfully deserve it. And I think Fallout 76 rightfully deserves much of the criticism. And I think even more so than just Fallout 76. I think Fallout 76 was a reckoning day for a lot of things that Bethesda's gotten away with for a long time. And I think in terms of the quality and the polish of the games that they release, if EA were to do that, if Activision were to do that, there'd be hell to pay right out of the gate for what Fallout 76 was. And I said this last week too, but like Mass Effect Andromeda was a better game on a technical level and on a lot of other levels than Fallout 76 is. And you may look at that and say that's apples to oranges, but if Mass Effect Andromeda would have had the weird bugs and errors and world clipping and poor gunplay and all of that stuff that plagues Fallout 76, people would still be railing on EA about it, even more than they were railing about it when it first came out. And so I think Bethesda has been playing with house money for quite some time, and that well has just dried up. Because think about Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was not free of the bugs and the jank that are Bethesda. And it's kind of like when you date a girl and in the beginning you're just really infatuated because it's new and she's cute and all this stuff. But then as the relationship goes on, she doesn't change. And all those things in the beginning that you thought were like cute and, oh, I can get past that, start to become the things that grate against you. And you just reach this tipping point where you're like, I have to decide, is this what I want to live with for the rest of my life? Just pretending like this is acceptable, or do I want to push back on this? And I think with Bethesda, a lot of people have gotten to where like, okay, Bethesda, the jank isn't cute anymore. Like we've lived with it in all the Elder Scrolls games. We've lived with it in all these Fallout games. And now we're here and we're expecting something a little bit better, but it seems to just be getting worse. And now we know that we're going to be stuck with these bones for the next couple of huge releases that you're going to have as well. Like, the writing, I think, has been on the wall for a while, and I think now we're starting to shine that light on it. And so I say all that to say, like, without legitimate criticism of things, and I don't think you're arguing this, but without legitimate criticism of things, nothing improves. And there is a line, and I don't even think it's a fine line. I think it's a very bold line between being just a straight asshole about your fandom and wanting the thing that you love to be better, or wanting the thing that you spent $60 on to be better. And I think those are both acceptable reactions to it. Now, going and making a Twitter account to rail on Todd Howard and, make veiled threats or not so veiled threats against Bethesda or whatever, like completely unacceptable. But I think there is a measure of hatred that can be leveraged towards the game, not the makers of the game or anything like that, that is totally acceptable.
Yeah. So I'm fine with all that. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm weary of, and I may have received this differently if I weren't already so weary of this being like the internet's knee jerk reaction to everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I'm so tired of people just hating and whining about everything that, like, by this point I'm just like, oh, whatever, another whiner. I have to like actively try to care about the fact that people are upset.
Yeah.
Which is not a good place to be in. I recognize this, because you're right. Being critical of the thing is important if we want to see it improve. Mm-hmm. So to kind of double back to where I was before, I had a good conversation with somebody today about they're trying to decide whether they want this game or not. And because they've seen so much backlash. And I think if you're the person that wants the immersive story, the moral decision-making that Bethesda's renowned for, you don't want this game. And I think that's where most of the backlash is coming from. I know there are other things, but I think most of the backlash is that's what people want from Bethesda. And when Bethesda has that, they'll overlook a lot of the other stuff. But this game didn't have the charming interactions with other people and the fun world impacting decisions to make. But for me, so I didn't play all the way through Skyrim because I got distracted, but I played all the way through Oblivion, like almost all the side quests and everything. The thing I love most about Bethesda games is exploring the worlds and finding all these weird places and interesting things. And if you're that kind of player, I think that this game does have a lot to offer you. Like I said, I like the whole I've emerged into a dead world and I'm essentially doing an autopsy to figure out what in the world went down.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't supposed to be this bad, you know? And I'm having a blast with that. And I've played with friends. I get on and play by myself sometimes. And it's one of those games where, like, I'll be sitting at work like, man, I can't wait I hope I can maybe get my work done and get home a little early and play a little bit of Fallout for the wife and kids to get home or whatever. But I do recognize that I am the exception to the rule right now. And as I led off with, this is definitely Bethesda's weakest release in a very long time. So even if we eliminate the unfounded hatred, even if we eliminate some things that are nitpicky, this game has had a mixed reception, and rightfully so. And we've touched on this a bit, but let's state clearly what is wrong with Fallout 76.
I think the big thing for me is exactly what you said. Like, it has abandoned a large portion of what has made Bethesda games, within like the world shaping decisions, the moral quandaries that you're put in. And in removing those things, it is completely and utterly highlighted the things that have just made Bethesda games a slog to try to get through from a gameplay perspective. The world feels empty, and even though the exploration is there and there is the environmental storytelling, the payoff, in my opinion, is not rewarding enough to continue to enter into the loop, like the gameplay loop of it. And Cody had a great question last week, and I couldn't really answer it. And that was like, what is the gameplay loop? That not like what is the feature that brings you back, but like what are you trying to accomplish within the game? And to me, like, I don't think it's very clearly identified. And the things that I wanted to be the goals within the game, because I think I knew coming in that we weren't going to get this like decision heavy, narrative heavy thing, but I did feel like I was going to get something that would be a lot of fun for me and my friends to get in and manipulate the world. And I just feel like they put so many boundaries around being able to do that it's removed a lot of the fun. And specifically like within the base building and the way that mechanic works of just like, you have to kind of claim your plot of land so that it knows within the matchmaking not to drop you in a world where your borders overlap. But within doing so, it becomes almost impossible to like build a base with your friends, like build a huge complex, which is something I was looking forward to. And I think some of those things can be rectified, but I also think there's just fundamental flaws within the game. And the VAT system is bad. The gunplay in Fallout games has always been bad, and that's always been like covered over by the VAT system. But trying to change that into real world VATs is just like shining the sun through a magnifying glass. It's intensifying the problem because there's nothing to veil what has been broken in that game for years and years. Yeah, and it's entirely possible that I'm having a different reaction to this game because I've always been more of an Elder Scrolls guy than a Fallout guy, and it's not just that. I've never been crazy about Fallout. I played Fallout 3 all the way through. I had fun, but like I didn't even consider buying Fallout 4, so that tells you how much I enjoyed Fallout 3, right? Yeah. So I think that is fair. Once you take away the charming storytelling, it's not that these are new problems. I hadn't even thought about it like that. These are the same problems. There's just nothing to cover it anymore. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, it's just lacking that redemption factor. it didn't add anything new to the formula, in my opinion, because it's always had environmental storytelling. You know, there's been a ton of that. There's been a ton of reading logs and listening to holotapes and those sorts of things. Like those have been a part of it, and those have supplemented the experience, in my opinion. But they've never been the experience of Fallout games.
Yeah. So, what are you trying to accomplish in the game? Like, so you should have emerged, and there should have been people. Is kind of the story. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is this scorched plague has moved through and consumed these people. And so I suspect the end game is like, I'm sure there are people who've gotten to the end game at this point, but I'm not even remotely close because I'm so easily distracted. But I suspect the end game is going to be wiping out that scorched plague. And that'll kind of justify why we haven't experienced the scorched in Fallout before. Mm-hmm. But you've got to do so much reading and listening to arrive at understanding that. And for most people, that's not going to be something they want to take on.
But it's also totally counterintuitive to the idea of get in this world and play it with your friends. Like, all right, guys, I'm going to need everybody on their mics to be quiet while I listen to this holotape. Or, hey, guys, before we advance on this quest, can I read this 8 pages of research that have been done? You know, like, those things are cool in old Fallout games where it was just you. But it's not as fun when it's like me and you are playing the game and we're having to do the same exact things in the quest. Like me activating a computer doesn't activate it for you. And like, I understand that from a design perspective, but from a gameplay perspective, it's just, it's bad form in my opinion. Like if we're partied up, if we're on a team and we're doing a quest together, I should be able to activate the computer. We all get the whatever supply you get from activating the computer, and we don't each have to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. Do you want to highlight anything else that is wrong with this game?
Well, I do think another one is just without the NPCs, there's no companionship, and that was a really big thing in Fallout 4 was like managing your relationships with your companions and growing those over time, and they kind of were a part of the world with you. And I guess the idea now is that when you're running in co-op, like your friends are your companions. But that was such like a major part of Fallout 4 because that was like the relationship that was being highlighted. Think about all the marketing. It was the main character with dog meat walking around, you know? And it's lacking that again. Like I feel like there's so many features that are removed without enough being added, without enough of value being added back in to think like, man, this is really good stuff. It just kind of feels like a failed experiment in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Another reason I think I'm having a different experience than a lot of people is I've encountered very few like bugs. And I know, like reading, a lot of people have encountered all kinds of issues. But the only thing I've had that was an issue, and I'm not even sure it was an issue, so it may have just been a bad game design decision, but was when me and you were doing the mission where we had to find three different types of creatures, and it gave us an area to go search for them, but they weren't in the highlighted area. We wound up finding them in other places. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, like I haven't had that experience. Well, and if I had,
I'm sorry, real quick. There's been a couple times where like we've had a hard time getting together on a server. There was that one time you got in and you couldn't manage your inventory, and you had to.
Oh yeah, that did happen.
You had to back out. Like it wouldn't let you do anything with it. So I mean, and those are little things that like, okay, we got to back out, we got to reset. Like big deal. That happens all the time. But death by 1,000 cuts. You know, it happens enough and it starts to dampen the experience.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is wrong with it is I think the social dynamic was a great idea executed poorly.
Yes, very much so.
Now, I think there are good things about how the PvP works, but like one night I was streaming me and this guy had like a 30-minute gunfight, no exaggeration. And it was a blast in that moment because what drew it out for us was we got attacked by a huge band of Scorched while we were fighting each other. So there are like 30, 40 NPCs flooding around us trying to kill each of us while we're trying to kill each other. It was amazing. Great fun. But if that hadn't happened and it's just been 20 minutes of us shooting at each other, it probably wouldn't have been quite as thrilling. The proximity chat, it stops functioning when you go into a team, and that's a stupid decision. Because in this world that you wanted to be social, you want people talking.
Yeah.
You want to make that as easy as possible. So I definitely think the social dynamic could have been done a whole lot better.
Yeah, totally agree there.
So as you stated, we have to judge a game as it is, not as it has the potential to be. And I think that the mixed to negative reviews are fair. I do want to be clear on that. But do you think that anything can be done to give this like a Rainbow Six Siege sort of redemption, or at least a No Man's Sky sort of redemption?
Well, I would argue the No Man's Sky redemption arc is probably even better than the Rainbow Six arc, just because it's insane. But they released another patch for No Man's Sky that added like a whole lot more on Thanksgiving Day. So yeah, that game's still chugging right along. Short answer, absolutely. I mean, Bethesda's one of the most talented teams they're flush with cash. Like they have the potential to make, and I think this is a big enough sandbox that it's not going to be quickly abandoned, and that they can definitely start to do some iterative things that are going to make it a whole lot better. I think diversifying quests and making them more of an event. I'm sorry, not quest, events. Diversifying the events and making them more sparse, but with like greater rewards and kind of things that impact the world. I think that would be a start. I think having more collaborative and cooperative base building would be another thing, because you can really start to kind of flesh the game out and have people creating their own stories in the sandbox. That would be a quick and easy fix in the beginning. I think having private and custom servers for people to be able to populate would be a big thing, because then you can kind of set house rules. You can turn off the logic of if somebody doesn't attack you back, then you only deal half damage, which I think is another half measure, So yeah, I think there are things that can be done to rectify the situation. I think even like, hey, we're going to drop some NPCs in, with our next expansion or whatever, next update, there's going to be other people from Vault 76 or whatever that you'll be able to interact with. Like, I think there are opportunities to do that sort of stuff, or even like quests where it marks somebody else, like a player on the map, right? And you have to go find that person and talk to them, and they'll give you a quest or something. Like, force more interaction between the players that are populating the server, rather than just being kind of these, autonomous dots on the map that operate outside of everybody else.
Yeah. I'm with you on all that. Adding NPCs to the map, like I've been thinking about that. That's easily done through some DLC, and you could make it fit story wise. Like, great job, you've got the Scorch Plague under control. So now settlers are going to start moving back into the land that they lost. Definitely doable. A lot of the things that are wrong with it, I don't know that you can do anything about, like running the game on the engine that it's running on.
Yeah.
Like, that's done. And gosh, Bethesda, please alter course. It's probably too late to alter course on these future games, but man, they need to update that engine. The gunplay being bad, I think people are very forgiving of that, because Fortnite is huge right now. But there's got to be enough good to offset those sorts of things, like you've kind of established here. But I guess I don't have anything to add besides what you've added. A lot of what I was going to say overlaps with what you said, but it does come down to just fleshing this world out more, making it more rewarding to do things, making it more rewarding to explore and figure out what happened. Like last night in the game, next time you're on, if you ever play again, because it sounds like you've enjoyed this far, far less than I have.
Oh no, I'm still planning on playing it with you. I'm having fun getting in there and like just kind of messing around in the world, but there's nothing that's like, I need to get on here by myself and play.
Gotcha.
Especially when Overwatch exists.
Right? But last night I was playing by myself and I found this church that had like been taken over by some suicide cult. It was like super creepy. Like there were a bunch of skeletons in the pews, and I'm like, what happened here? And then you start looking closer and they're like skeleton structure, statue things on the walls, like idol sort of things. And up front there's a guy at the podium and a skeleton guy on the bench beside him. And then you go up to the table, there are all these candles arranged, and there are a few empty wine bottles and a few packs of rat poison. And you're like, holy crap. and that's really cool to me. Like, you could walk through that building and not pay attention, leave. But when you really examine the environment, I'm having a blast of like piecing together the things that went down.
Yeah.
And that's a cool component, but I fully understand that that's not a cool enough component for a lot of people to offset the rest.
Yeah. I think another big thing that's missing right now is just, and kind of at a worrisome level, is just, I don't think Bethesda has really said what the roadmap is for this game, especially given the amount of backlash that's come out around it. And I hate saying it like that, as if some pissed off fans should be the thing that dictates how Bethesda messages their game. But I think there is a lot of unrest, even among people who spent money on the game, which is more important.
Yeah.
And Bethesda hasn't really come out and said like, hey guys, we know that some of this stuff isn't where you want it to be, but here are the things that are coming in the future and content updates because I don't know if they've even announced like that there's paid DLC. I'm hoping it's all just like, we're going to work on the game as we go here. So that worries me.
And that, more so than the brokenness of the game, is what really caused issues with No Man's Sky. When the developers went radio silent, like, that was the bigger problem. Mm-hmm. If you keep fans informed about what you're doing, that goes a long way. So I'm with you there. And I think Bethesda probably expected this game to perform a little more poorly than the other games did, but I don't think they expected this level of reception. So I understand they're reeling, but they kind of need to get on it and let people know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's all I got to say about that.
All right, Larry. I have failed you this week. I have a one-line show note here for my topic. You put, freaking 300 words on yours. So, but I just want to have us, we're starting to reach kind of the end of the console generation. We're going to start ramping up more and more conversations about what the next console generation is going to look like. That being said, we need to have an episode where we get our predictions on the board before stuff starts leaking out about these consoles. So,
leaks in this era.
So be on the lookout for a predictions episode about the next console generation. But I do want to take some time to look back, and I'm stealing this idea straight from Polygon. But they did a re-review of the Xbox One, where it's been 5 years, Larry. 5 years since the launch of the Xbox One, which puts into perspective so many things of just how old we are and how long we've been friends, how long we've been doing podcasts.
I'm about to turn 30.
And I kind of wanted to just do the same thing. Let's like kind of do not a post-mortem of the Xbox One, but just a looking back and saying, here's where Xbox started, here's where it is now, and here's where we think. Here's like, I think it'd be good to kind of end it with here is the number that we would give it in terms of like a 1 out of 10 for what the Xbox One is right now, not taking into consideration where it's going in the future, but where they've come now. So let's just kind of start with a little bit of time travel here. All right, let's hop in our time machine.
All right,
and go back to 2013 and the announcement of this is
my best Doctor Who noise.
It's a TARDIS. We have arrived. It's 2013. We're in Los Angeles for E3 2013. Where
we're about to get mad.
Where Xbox is unveiling features of the Xbox One X. Larry, thinking back to that era, what are some of the big things that jumped out that you remember from that announcement? Because I remember us having quite a colorful conversation about its announcement.
Yeah. So you had to check in online. Was it daily?
Yeah.
It was something ridiculous.
Daily.
It was daily. Yeah. So that was the big thing. Like you had to have internet access for this console, reliable internet access to at least check in each day, or you couldn't play your games. And I think that announcement alone, there were other things that factored in, but I think that was the big one that got Xbox started off on the wrong foot this generation.
Yeah. Well, in the messaging behind it, especially because maybe this was last week we were talking about this, but in today's world, I mean, think about the number of games that you can't play without being online. You know, like to me, the whole online check-in thing at the time was a huge deal, and I think a lot of people, but I don't think people understood at that time, like, oh man, the top 10 best-selling games of this console generation were all going to require some sort of online check-in, most likely. You know, when you think about the Call of Duties, the Destinies, the Overwatches, like all of those games require online access. So,
like, Microsoft knew where we were going, and we didn't know it yet, and we didn't trust them enough to go there.
it's like they put a car that you were about to go on family vacation into a trebuchet and just tried to launch it to your destination. It's like there were more effective ways of getting here, more effective and less painful.
And on their side, I kind of understand it though. Like, if I received that news negatively. But if I had understood where gaming was headed, like, I wouldn't have been worried. Like, I get that they were excited. Now I understand why they were excited.
Yeah.
Because this era of gaming is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to this era of gaming once we hop back into the TARDIS. Let's remain in 2013. There were a couple other big announcements concerning the Xbox that were received with less than enthusiasm. Another big one was the Kinect was going to be required, and it was going to be a $500 console. And the reason for it being it was going to have this large, unnecessary piece of equipment in it that you could talk to and play a bunch of 4 out of 10 games on.
Yep.
And I think we right now, Turkey's worst nightmare and one of Kinect's biggest fans, Larry Hunt, because I think you were honestly like, you probably had one of the higher views of the Kinect in terms of a peripheral at the launch of the Xbox.
Yeah, I've always liked the Kinect. I thought it was really fascinating technology. And although they weren't AAA games by any means, I've enjoyed several of the Kinect games. I couldn't name a single one now, but I enjoyed them when I was playing them. I played one. It was a strange Japanese game, Dark Dreams Don't Die. But you were a detective and you used the Kinect to navigate the game. I had a lot of fun with that game. But all in all, the thing itself, I used to all the time use my hands to navigate the menus to did you ever watch Minority Report?
No. But I know what you're talking about because I wrote an article for ZAM about a year ago and talked about how they were trying to take that Minority Report, like there's this augmented reality interaction you can have with your computer.
And they nailed it, and I loved it. I used it every time I could. But with each successive update, as they stopped supporting the Kinect, those hand commands don't work on mine at least anymore. Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of sad about it. But the voice commands and everything, the Kinect, again, in a lot of ways, it was ahead of its time. Like the voice command feature, like everything is voice commands now. But in 2013, that wasn't really the case. So that was really neat. But then I also understand that as a peripheral, it has a lot of technology that people don't care about, like being able to read the depth of where my hands is and stuff. It's a technology that has a lot of usefulness in the world, but not so much for gaming. So I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think. There was another big one that trying to remember now. There was the online check-in came with a set of implications about it, in terms of when you're trading in games, you would lose the license to that game. The check-in daily was to make sure that you still had a license to that game. But it was a cool premise because it was like we weren't going to have to put our discs in our console every time we wanted to switch out games. But it also made it to where if I let Larry borrow that game, I would lose the license to it on my console until I got it back. So they quickly started to backtrack on a lot of these things. Even before ahead of the launch, Sony kind of ate their lunch in terms of the messaging for the console. The console was also just like gigantic, like unnecessarily gigantic, over engineered, I think is what I would say. Like, and I think it stems from a lot of hesitancy that Xbox had after the 360's Red Ring of Death issues, that they were like, we need to make this thing so bulletproof from error that there are no hardware malfunctions like this. And they succeeded, but they also made probably one of the most hideous consoles of all time.
The other thing that, and the thing that Sony used to eat their lunch was the emphasis on entertainment as a whole. Like the Xbox didn't want to be gaming, just gaming. It wanted to be like your one-stop shop for all of your entertainment needs. Like you can route your cable through that Xbox. It had a one guide. I don't know if it still has it.
It does.
It had a guide.
Yep.
Okay.
Even the Xbox One X has
on TV.
HDMI in and out. You can still do it.
Yeah. And then you can use your Kinect control TV. Like, dude, I loved it from the get-go. I know there were people who didn't care about it, but I was eating hot wings and controlling the TV, pausing, fast-forwarding without having to wipe my hands first. And I was like, wife. That's what I call my wife. I am living in the future right now. I said that all the time when I got my Xbox.
And, we had DirecTV at the time. We've since cut the cord, but we had DirecTV, and it was cool to just be like, Xbox, go to ESPN, and it would go. The one guide feature was a little slow and clunky, and I mean the entire UI of the Xbox One was was clunky, but there was this like, it was kind of a it was kind of like a vision of what the future is going to be without being like a great execution of what the future was going to be, because me and my wife used to do this thing where we would just count the number of times it would take us to say Xbox on before it would come on, and the number would get absurdly high sometimes. And so there was always like a little bit of jank to it, but it was quirky. But yeah, they definitely took this approach of like, we want to be the everything box. And I think they even went as far as saying like, we want to replace the set-top box in your house. To where you do everything with us. You're renting movies through us. You're watching your cable through us. You're playing video games through us. You're listening to music through us. And that focus seemed like a bi or trifurcation of focus, to the point where gamers felt like, well, they're kind of abandoning our wants and needs with this console. We just want something focused on gaming. And the market showed that that's what gamers wanted by the PS4 coming out and just dominating.
The hardcore gamer console. Gosh. And
go ahead.
And I said this then, and I stand by it. Like that whole thing was so silly. Like, and I think never mind. I'm getting into this year. I'll stay in 2013. I was excited about that entertainment aspect. I like having like everything in one place where I don't have to, like, I didn't have to find my remote. I didn't have to switch from HDMI 1 to HDMI 2. Like, there's just one thing I got to do. I loved the simplicity of it. I thought it was amazing.
And there was all kinds of cool features. Like, I loved the snap feature. And yeah, it was one of the main reasons that the thing was slow and clunky and awful. But when I was playing video games and had picture-in-picture with DirecTV in the top corner watching, some sporting event that I was into, like, that was really cool. And they didn't have the latitude to continue to iterate and hone in on that craft. They had to recapture the message, and I think we're reaching kind of a natural time to be able to move forward with the console. But they started to realize, like, in order to recapture this audience, we have to show them that we're putting the gamer first. And within that came a lot of different decisions. Big one being backward compatibility and saying, hey, these 360 games that we're going to start working to bring them over to be compatible on the Xbox One. The forward compatibility thing of just like, if you buy stuff for us now, it'll continue. We'll continue to support it on future hardware iterations. Like, they really started to say, if you spend money in this ecosystem, there's staying power in the investment that you're making. And I think that was a really strong message. And but they also slipped up in the areas of just like, not a lot of exclusive games to play, but games take so much time to incubate that there was really no quick fix. Because I think it became very evident even at the outset of the Xbox One that Halo and Gears and Forza were not going to be able to carry this console forward in terms of its software offerings. And they're still kind of paying their penance for that, I guess, in thinking that it would. That there just wasn't a ton of compelling new IP that was coming out. And so they kind of started to just make these not small, but more immediately impactful changes to the ecosystem with like backward compatibility and the number of different services that they're offering, bringing EA access to the Xbox. Because I think people tend to forget that like that was kind of a big deal that EA was making this big service decision to be. They made the decision to bring one of their big services exclusively to one of the consoles, and it was the console that was kind of behind. So it was almost like a getting their head screwed on straight. And I think that's kind of where we still are with Xbox in a lot of ways. They're still trying to get their head around like who they are and finding their identity. And I think it's clearer now than it's ever been in the last 5 years. But I'm not necessarily, I think it's better than where it was, but I'm not quite sure that throwing the baby out with the bathwater was the right decision for the Xbox. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean?
Xbox wanting to be the central hub. We want to replace the set-top box. Mm-hmm. Like, we want to be the hub for all things entertainment. We want you to be able to talk to your TV and control it. Like, there were a lot of really cool ideas there that, I mean, we're starting to see reintegrated back in. Like, the Xbox now integrates with, I think it's your Alexa. You can like talk to your Alexa and the Alexa will control your Xbox. And it's like, okay, that's just the Kinect. But we're again in a world that's like more used to talking to your house and telling it to do things for you.
But they dropped the Kinect to drop the price point. So like the vast majority of Xbox owners never experienced the coolness of the Kinect. And so, sorry, I didn't understand what you were asking at first, but I think I do now. I've kind of perceived it as Xbox just did what they planned to do. They just stopped asking us for permission. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like they kind of slid in and became the entertainment hub. And I think there's room to grow within that. But I think that is something that sets the Xbox apart from the PlayStation. And they do it in a really cool way. Like most of the time when my wife and I want to rent a movie, I'm too lazy now at this point to even drive to the Redbox. Mm-hmm. I just hop on the Microsoft Store and rent the movie.
Yep. That's where we've been watching all of our movies.
Yeah. That's what I watch Netflix, Hulu on. You got multiple options for live TV through it. I cut the cord a long time ago, but I'm still like, I could get Sling, I could get Hulu Live if I wanted to do that. Which I know you can do that on other systems as well. But I think even you, I never see you fire those things up on your PlayStation. I always see you fire them up on your Xbox.
Well, it's also because the media remote for the Xbox is way better than the PlayStation media remote.
Yeah. Disney movies, it used to be Disney. I don't remember what it was called, but Disney's service, Movies Anywhere. So if you buy a Disney movie physically, you get a digital code. You're aware of this probably. And you plug that in Movies Anywhere. Well, they've integrated that with the Microsoft Store now. So every Disney movie I own, and my wife owns a ton of Disney movies, is now it's on my Xbox whenever I want to watch it. I don't have to go find the disc. And remember, that includes my Star Wars, that includes my Marvel movies. So they did all that, and they did it well. The music integration, I used to use that a lot. I don't really use it so much anymore. But yeah, I'm glad that they are reintroducing some of those features, but I don't think they ever really abandoned them. I think they just shifted into a mentality of don't talk about it, just show that you can do it well.
Yeah. Well, the one death in all of this was the Kinect. It was the sacrificial lamb of this console generation for Xbox, and they tried to push too hard, too fast. And also, I think it's become clear with VR, with the slow takeoff of AR, and with the death of the Kinect, that people don't want to wave their arms around in their living room by themselves for the most part,
Yeah.
And much like with Fallout 76, Larry is the exception to the rule. but I think for the most part, I think if you were to look at the heat mapping for the uses of the Kinect, there was probably far more voice command usage than gesture.
And having the infrared blaster on that thing, that's kind of what sets it apart from the Alexa for me. It could control the TV itself as well. And so, one really funny illustration of this for me is one time my brother-in-law and his wife were staying with us, and he has some hearing problems, and they go to sleep with the TV on. So they went to sleep with the TV blaring, and I waited till I was pretty sure they were asleep, turned on the Xbox app on my smartphone, and turned the TV down from my bedroom without even getting out of bed. It was amazing. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I guess from a hardware perspective, which is where I guess I wanted this conversation to kind of stay, because we can talk about the software side if you want, but I think it's clear it's lacking, and the dawn seems to be breaking on that front. But if we're looking just at a hardware perspective, where would you have rated launch Xbox One, and where would you rate the line now, Xbox One S, Xbox One X?
So full disclosure, I've never been that guy who wanted the cutting edge, most powerful hardware. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we'd have had PCs if we were. But I did talk to some guys back when the specs released and PlayStation was more powerful, and guys who I trust who knew a lot more than I did were the PlayStation is going to be a little better, but it's going to be not even noticeable to most people. For the most part, there were some games where it was noticeable, and there were other factors to that. But I always thought I've been satisfied with the hardware, the speed of it. The only thing I was dissatisfied with was if you bought an Xbox real early on, the storage space was trash, man. Yeah. You had to buy an external hard drive, which I never did. So I'm just constantly uninstalling games and then reinstalling them when I want to play them. But the thing itself was great, and by the time the One X, I don't know if you're ready to get there, but I think hardware-wise now, the One X is definitely the best console available.
Absolutely, yeah,
unquestionably,
yeah,
just as unquestionably as Bethesda's most recent game release was their weakest.
Yeah, well, and I guess I'm more asking from not just the power perspective, but ecosystem. When you think Xbox One, in the beginning, for me personally, with all the cool little bells and whistles, it was again one of those these are all great ideas that are not being executed on super well. And from an experience side of it, and just the everyday usability of the console, I probably would have given the original Xbox a 6 maybe, just because it always kind of felt beta-esque for all of the things it was trying to do, and that it was a jack of all trades kind of master of none box. But now where we're standing in terms of its functionality, as an owner of an Xbox One X, the UI just kind of breezes through. Game Pass is an awesome service. Backward compatibility is incredible. All of the entertainment stuff that I use it for, like I think the Xbox as a piece of hardware and as an ecosystem, like, is probably like an 8 out of 10 in my opinion. Like, it's really strong, and it puts me in a confident place to believe like this next iteration of consoles that are coming are going to be state of the art. They're going to be innovative, but they're going to be innovative in ways that are conscious for gamers. And I think that's kind of what Xbox had this console generation, was an identity check of just, here is what we thought we were going to be moving forward, but this is really where we need to put our focus. And I think we're starting to see how that's coming together, and I'm really excited for the flesh to get thrown on that skeleton that they've been putting together.
Yeah. I'm right there close with you. Probably about a 6 out of 10 when it launched. And I think a lot of people would have rated it even lower than that, but I think that Xbox just fell prey to bad messaging on their part, which enabled PlayStation to really amp up their messaging and hype their console as the, without a doubt, superior console. And I'd have rated it even higher if not for the exclusives problem. Like, PlayStation just dominated the market as far as exclusives went. Thank God for Titanfall keeping Xbox's head above the water there at the beginning, because for a long time, like, that's all you had to play on Xbox that you couldn't play on PlayStation. But what'd you say you would rate it now?
8 out of 10.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm right there in the same boat with you. I'd also go 8 out of 10. And if the exclusives thing is still an issue, and if they had more to offer in that vein, I think I might bump it. You know what? I'll say it's a 9 out of 10. Because exclusives is my only complaint. Like, I don't have any other issue with it. I'm really satisfied with it, with the console itself and the features. And there's still plenty of things I can do with the Xbox that I can't do with the PlayStation. And I get being like the hardcore gamer console and focusing on gaming, and that's all some people want, but I love consuming entertainment, and my Xbox really amplifies my ability to do that.
And not to mention that the Xbox One X is the single best place to play third-party games. Like, in this whole idea of there's no games on Xbox, like, it's just bullshit. I mean, yeah, there may not be that many exclusive games on it, but every third party that's coming to PlayStation for the most part is also coming to Xbox, and the better form of it to play is on the Xbox One X. Hands down, no doubt. Now, my favorite games of this generation, all PlayStation exclusives. And so, you know, to hedge off some of the ill will that will come towards me for the statement that I just made, like Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War are probably my two of my top 3 favorite games this console generation. But that being said, like, I think Xbox deserves credit for putting together a piece of machinery that I think that the differences are noticeable, and I enjoy my third-party experiences on the Xbox One X to the extent where that's where I'm buying most of my games now, which has not always been the case.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, Larry. We're an hour and a half into the show, so let's move on to everybody's favorite game that we play at the end of this show. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them. Larry, you know how this game works.
Yes.
I have 4 games listed here. 3 of them are real. 1 of them is not. It is your job to suss out the one that is not real. Let's remind people of the score. You and Cody tied at 3. I took the lead last week and now have 4.
Oh, man.
All right.
Okay.
So you can tie tie with me this week if you get this right. You ready?
Ready.
Let me get some stuff out of the way on my computer. Here we go. Number 1, Gelly break. On the planet Gelly live the Gallert-like Gellies. Their existence is threatened by the evil blob. The players, in the form of 2 Gellies created in a laboratory, begin their adventure to save the planet, culminating in a final battle with evil blob. Number 2, Hopeless. Despair, the mysterious pit, appeared in the middle of town ages ago and has consumed neighbors slowly but surely ever since.
Wait, time out. Hopeless, Despair, the Mysterious Pit is the title?
Hopeless.
Okay.
And then the description is, Despair, the mysterious pit, appeared in the middle of town ages ago and has consumed your neighbors slowly but surely ever since. Enough is enough. You must delve into its depths, survive its darkness, and bring back the joy that has been lost for so long. Number 3, Goat Punks, all one word. Goat Punks is a rip-roaring King of the Hill multiplayer game of goats, mountains, fireballs, and good old head-butting action. Can you hoof it to the top and stay there? Number 4, The First Tree Console Edition. The First Tree, a third-person exploration game centered around 2 parallel stories, a fox trying to find her missing family and a young couple dealing with a tragedy in theirs. All right, Larry. Gelly Break, Hopeless, Goat Punks, and The First Tree Console Edition. Which one of these games is not real?
I'm going to guess Goat Punks.
And you would be incorrect. So, Hopeless is the made-up game.
Oh, man.
I'm getting better.
That was my second choice.
Better at this. So I am now up by 2 on each of you. The score is 3-3 to 5. It's a little unfair when you and Cody aren't here. It's a lot easier for me to score. The numbers are more in my favor, but that's on you guys. So. All right, Larry, who are you? Where can we find you? What are you gonna be tweeting about this week?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LarryHuntsZombies, and you're gonna find me tweeting about just photos of my good times in the world of Fallout 76.
There we go. So no tweets.
Oh, dang.
Oh, I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at TK from Antioch and also at Tales from Gold. This week, I'm going to be tweeting. I haven't thought about what I'm going to be tweeting. I'm probably just going to re-review all kinds of different things in history. Like moon landing, when it happened, 10 out of 10, right? Nowadays that we know it's fake, 4 out of 10.
I saw the joke coming. Still thought it was funny.
All right, guys, this is PvA Radio, episode 18. It is a wrap. We get together every week, talk about the biggest stories in gaming news, then push it out to you on all podcast services. And over on YouTube, just search PvA Radio. We're going to start live streaming these bad boys. Go over to twitch.tv/PvA Radio, hit that follow button and the notification bell. You'll see when Larry is playing Fallout 76, see what all the fuss is about. You'll see when I'm playing Overwatch, see what I've been fussing about. All of those things. Go hunt us down. PlayerVersusAll.com, sign up, and you'll be among the first to know what our first issue is going to be. Until next week, guys, we love you.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.